Inwood, Manitoba, a tiny hamlet surrounded by the dense woods that it's named for. A new marriage for old friends should bring joy, but the honeymoon is over before it begins. This tiny community is home to a cold-blooded killer with a plan. Who really knows what their friends are capable of? In this isolated place, a group of companions and relatives go into the woods and enter the heart of darkness. About 50 miles northwest of Winnipeg, the capital city of Manitoba, on Provincial Trunk Highway 17 in the rural municipality of Armstrong, lies the hamlet of Inwood. Remote Inwood is named for its forest area. Almost 100 years since that naming, the peace is disrupted when some of the locals make an unfortunate venture into the dark and desolate wild, a place from which they will never be able to emerge from. Ivan John Radokaj is born in the 1960s to Croatian immigrant parents, Darlene and Joseph Radokaj. Ivan grows to be a giant. He's famous for his size, nearly 6'10" and more than 275 pounds. His parents see Ivan's physical strength and potential and have big ideas for their great big son. In the 1980s, professional wrestling is in a golden age, a boom of popularity that surges across the United States, Canada, and even further due to the expansion of cable television and pay-per-view, coupled with the efforts of promoters. Ivan gets his start in the wrestling world in 1981, when, in his mid-teens, his parents take him to new brand wrestling promoter Walter Shevchik. They ask Shevchik to take Ivan on and train their son. Shevchik sees that Ivan has the ideal stature. Shevchik teaches Ivan the ropes. Ivan graduates to going in the ring at events that are taped at a Winnipeg community center and are broadcast on a local cable access channel.
He was a wrestler, went by Big John, Croatian Giant, stuff like that. I always said I wish I got to witness some of that at some point. You know, it was kind of cool growing up and telling people, yeah, my dad used to be a wrestler.
Even Ivan's appetite is famous. He can eat vast amounts, and despite how tough and intimidating he looks, his personality is more like that of a big kid. Ivan's height and weight work in his favor. He enjoys a brief stint as a professional wrestler. But after his mentor Shevchik's new brand wrestling folds in 1984, Ivan barely enters a ring.
He was actually in the sumo wrestling for quite a while.
In 1985, he becomes the first champion of Shevchik's North American sumo wrestling, a less violent contact sport. Opponents have a hard time pushing Ivan out of the ring because of his size.
I remember when I was younger, we always used to go out to the lake and wait for a windy day to go on the beach, and the waves were always, you know, crazy, throwing me around. He was a very big person, you know, almost 7 feet tall. And, you know, I remember a lot of times I'd be swimming out there, and if it ever looked like I was struggling or anything like that, all of a sudden I was 7 feet in the air, and he'd pick me up by the shorts, and I'd be, you know, above everything else.
But Ivan's pro wrestling career is brief, and people in the local wrestling industry say they barely see or hear from Ivan in more than a decade. Some would say his behavior is somewhat reclusive. In the spring of 2007, Ivan moves into an Inwood home of his own. That's when tragedy strikes and Ivan is involved in a serious car accident. Fortunately, an insurance settlement helps him make ends meet. Before and after the accident, neighbors say Ivan is rarely seen. But Ivan has been seen by someone. Ivan has fallen in love. Ivan has known Melody Lynn Sanford for years. Melody has an older friend, Rita Cushney, who she's known since she was a child. Melody introduces Rita to the man she has started dating, Ivan Radokaj. Ivan and Melody fall in love fast and begin to think long term. Things move along very quickly, and in May of 2007, the couple move into Ivan's Inwood home. Living together goes so well that the couple decide to make their union official, and they marry on June 23, 2007. But only a few weeks after their marriage, trouble erupts for the newlyweds. Ivan and Melody start to argue, and Melody leaves the house angry. Only weeks after their wedding, on July 24, 2007, Melody files a petition for a protection order against her husband, Ivan Radokaj, which is granted by the courts. It bans the man from coming within 500 meters of Melody. Melody states that Ivan is jealous of the time she spends with friends and family, and is even angry when she cuddles her cat. All of her complaints culminate in her claim that Ivan loads a shotgun and threatens to shoot her. The marriage appears to have been too hasty. Melody and her daughter move in with her friend Rita. Despite the abrupt end to their honeymoon phase, Melody and Ivan open up the channels of communication, and after some cooling off time, they both appear ready to find common ground. They plan to have dinner together and talk about their relationship and endeavor to work out the kinks in their new marriage. Ivan believes dinner with Melody is a positive sign and that they can work their problems out, and maybe Melody will eventually return home. Ivan and Melody decide to meet in a restaurant in the neighboring town of Toulon, just 14 miles from Inwood, Manitoba. The two have dinner and coffee and stay until about 9 p.m. They exit the restaurant and spend more time talking. As well as hugging and kissing in the parking lot. Ivan and Melody part in separate cars and go back to where they're each living respectively. But the night has offered hope for the future, and Ivan calls Melody's cell phone to say goodnight. Ivan returns home from dinner. Upon entering, he is instantly surrounded by a gang of people brandishing weapons. He's a big man and a professional wrestler, but on this night, he'll have to fight for his life. He's outnumbered, and as his assailants ruthlessly pummel the surprised, unarmed man, the giant falls. Two days later, on September 14th, a friend who comes looking for Ivan finds the man where he fell, dead in his home.
I was on the phone with somebody I went to high school with, and actually both my aunties, his sisters, were at our house at the time, and they had gotten a phone call and found out that, you know, he might have been dead, and my mom came down and got me, and we went to my grandma's house, and yeah, unfortunately found out that it was true, and RCMP came and talked to us and just kind of, at that time they didn't have a lot to explain, just, you know, the unfortunate news that he had passed away.
The corpse is lying face up on the floor of his cluttered living room, close to the front door where the keys are still in the lock. Just as he was when he returned home from dinner out with his estranged wife, he wears jeans with cigarettes in the pocket and light weather clothing. Ivan appears to have died because of blunt force trauma.
Blunt force trauma is an injury to the body by a physical impact, usually by an object. And then in this case, unfortunately, Ivan sustained injuries due to a baseball bat and a crowbar that was used by the individuals.
He has what could be defensive wounds on his left arm and wrist, as if he had tried to shield himself from blows.
Investigators looking into a break-and-enter report are able to look at the scene of the crime and establish quite a bit of information right off the bat. From the point of entry to the point of exit if they're different. Often when specific things are being looked for, other valuable items that you would typically expect to be stolen by a random thief are left untouched. This points to the fact that it was a targeted break-in.
Police find the house in disarray. In a bedroom, dresser drawers have been left open and the mattress is not on the bed. It appears to have been thrown or pushed off. The bed has a bedpost at each corner, and the top of each of these bedposts has been removed, revealing a cavity. The cavities are empty. Ivan's house appears to have been searched in haste. A former wrestler ambushed and killed in cold blood. But who did it? Did Ivan have enemies he thought were his friends? Professional wrestler Ivan Radokaj is ambushed and killed in his home. Who killed the Croatian Giant? A cooperative, Melody Sanford, is interviewed as a witness, not a suspect, to establish context for the case. The police interview widely. Ivan John Radokaj, only 43 years of age and married less than 1 month, is laid to rest, and his killers are still at large. For an area as small and quiet as Inwood, residents and their simple rural way of life will be shaken to the core. But as time passes, Rita Cushney, Ivan's wife Melody's close confidant, begins to open up and tells some interesting tales to a friend. In fact, Rita hints to a friend over numerous occasions that she knows a lot more about the mysterious death of Melody's husband than she's revealed to police.
Rita's friend's personal discomfort at the situation, the more she learns from Rita about what happened, the more she realizes that it's probably necessary to get Rita off the street as a service to the community.
In fact, what this friend learns impels her to call the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and start leaking some stories of her own. A corporal who works with the Major Crimes Unit receives a phone call from an RCMP officer at the Lundar, Manitoba detachment. Rita's friend is clearly uncomfortable with the things that Rita has been telling her and needs to get them off her chest.
Guilt can have a profound effect on a person's personality. It can affect their psyche in ways that they often can't control.
Rita's friend agrees to cooperate with the police, and over the next couple of months provides ongoing witness statements that will prove pivotal to the investigation. A meticulously planned operation goes into effect by police. In other words, the sting is on. Behind the scenes, all unknown to Rita Cushney, investigators gather witness interviews, physical evidence, and wiretaps.
Well, undercover operations often can involve what we refer to as a sting, which is a preset situation that we want to involve the target in and have them believe they were part of that circumstance. So these are very intensive situations. They can be over very quickly, or they could go on for years.
Rita is talking and has no idea that it's not just her friend, but the authorities who are listening. From Rita's informal chats with her friend, police identify several people of interest. Rita Cushney's son, Donald Richard, is on the list of suspects. Police are also interested in Daniel Richard, Donald's cousin. The third is Tim Richard, another cousin who is in his late teens, younger than both Donald and Daniel. The fourth is a friend of the family, Christopher Houle. And there's one more person the police are interested in watching. That person is Rita's special friend and Ivan's grieving widow, Melody Lynn Sanford. One night, the suspects are drinking with music in the background. When the music stops and the conversation turns to the murder of Ivan Radokaj. This is the moment the covert sting operation could only dream of. Unaware police are listening in. The real story about Ivan's death is revealed.
In a case like this, there's a very serious crime, homicide, and there's essentially a sting operation that's undergone to uncover it. There are a huge number of people involved, and it produces a massive amount of evidence.
A giant-sized former pro wrestler is bludgeoned to death in what appears to be a robbery gone wrong. But there's more to this case than the authorities think. Rita Cushney, a friend of Ivan's widow, is unable to keep what she knows quiet. She leaks information to a friend, and what that friend learns sends her to police. People of interest are identified. The friend agrees to wear a wiretap. And one night at a drunken party, People let their guards down and start to talk, and the case breaks wide open. The story that is told brings all the evidence the police have gathered into focus to tell a clear story.
Autopsy report reveals that the 5 out of the 8 skull fractures were considered major or significant to Ivan's death. These injuries included a 14 by 9 centimeter abrasion to the right side of his face and a penetrating wound to the right side of his forehead.
Police bring Donald Richard, Tim Richard, Daniel Richard, and Christopher Houle in for questioning.
There are all kinds of techniques that the investigators will use to either get a confession or just try to get information that may be inconsistent with what was previously received. The person being interrogated is faced with the idea of trying to keep every piece of information they provided to authorities or to investigators straight in their minds. One slip up can lead to, additional questions which make it difficult to keep their story straight.
Donald Richard is 35 years old and has no criminal record. He has one daughter with whom he maintains contact. At the time, he's leading a normal life, living common law with a woman and her 2 children. The perpetrators have everything to lose, but with the depth and scope of the undercover work already done by authorities, it's just a matter of time. The undercover sting operation reveals that Donald Richard recruits his cousin Tim for the plot to kill Ivan. Tim Richard is only 18 years old and lives with Donald and his family. Donald also recruits his other cousin, Daniel Richard. Daniel Richard, in turn, brings his friend Christopher Houle into the plan to kill Ivan. This is a group of people who up until now have had no criminal record. They're unsophisticated and have not covered their tracks. Donald has had issues with alcohol and other substances. In fact, none of these individuals have been without their own personal struggles and hardships, but until now, they've stayed inside the law. However, with Ivan Radokaj, something tips them over the edge and into the dangerous territory of murder, a place that they'll soon learn there's no way back out of. Police know from their covert investigation that while Melody is with Ivan at dinner near Toulon, Donald, Daniel, Tim, and Chris Houle drive to Ivan's house in a van belonging to Donald's spouse. Timothy Richard is driving the van. When the group arrives at Ivan's house, Donald instructs Tim to stay with the van. The others get out, taking a baseball bat and a couple of crowbars with them. The entrance door to Ivan's home is forced inward from the outside. Once they've gained access, Donald, Daniel, and Christopher lie in wait for Ivan's return from his restaurant date with Melody. And when the unsuspecting man walks in through his front door, the predators make their brutal, vicious move. Then, The men rob the home. Although they find neither the money nor the stash of illegal cigarettes they hope for, they remove various electronics and other items of property. The three flee, leaving Ivan Radokaj to die alone on his living room floor. After leaving the house, they hurry to their getaway vehicle and dispose of their weapons on the way. They drive to Donald's mother Rita Cushney's residence and drink beer. What has led these men, seemingly normal, law-abiding citizens, to this rash act of violence? Donald Richard, who is Rita Cushney's son, knows Melody Sanford through his mother. Melody alleges that her estranged husband, Ivan Radokaj, has sexually assaulted her daughter. According to Melody, after a disastrous 3-week marriage, she is now essentially being stalked and intimidated by her estranged husband. Donald Richard believes what he's told, that Melody and her daughter are the victims of an abuser. The fact that Ivan is a former pro wrestler, using his strength and skill to hurt 2 women, must be infuriating to hear.
The result of taking revenge out on somebody has that emotional component to it. And there's almost a sense of enjoyment in knowing that you have won the battle and taken a little more than what was taken from you.
Police bring Melody Sanford and Rita Cushney in for questioning. Melody Sanford, who was initially interviewed by police as a cooperative witness, is back for another interview, this time as a suspect. She didn't tell them about Ivan's alleged abuse the first time. Now police get a different story from Melody. According to the women, they know of no plot to murder Ivan, have nothing to do with Ivan's murder, and in fact, are Ivan's victims. Did Donald, Daniel, and Tim Richard, along with Christopher Houle, decide to play hero and exact revenge on Ivan for what they believe he did to Melody and her daughter? There's another voice to be heard, though. Ivan's. Joseph Radokaj and his wife have a story of their own that needs to be told to the authorities. The parents of Ivan Radokaj will speak for the dead. Ivan takes out his own order of protection against Melody. Ivan's father says that Ivan feared for his life because Melody Lynn Sanford wanted him dead. Ivan's family believe that Melody Sanford's greed fuels his killing because Ivan recently received an insurance settlement for a serious car accident he had months before he started dating Melody. The protection order filed by Ivan claims Melody Sanford only becomes interested in him after she discovers the $49,000 payout. In the order of protection, Ivan describes how he fears for his life, a concern he shares with his father. Ivan tells his father that Melody says she can snap her fingers and have me killed. Incredibly, There are even more threats made to Ivan by his wife in their 3-week marriage. Ivan also tells his parents that Melody Sanford threatens to send street gang members after him. 2 protection orders, one taken out by the husband, one taken out by the wife, both alleging threats, fear, and intimidation, both claiming to be the victim, who was telling the truth and who was lying. Ivan's fears have become reality as Melody's threats have come to pass. He's killed by a gang of thugs, but the question remains, why? Did Ivan's murderers kill him as a vengeance for his alleged abuse of Melody and her daughter? Or did Melody Lynn Sanford promise cash to the Richards and Christopher Houle for Ivan's murder? Was her friend Rita Cushney her right hand? The clues are all adding up. It's possible that this is a murder-for-hire plot involving 6 suspects. Authorities need to establish motive. And that opportunity comes knocking. The accumulated evidence is enough to charge the suspects, but the authorities want the ability to lay the maximum charges. They need more information about who led the plot. Tim Richard is the one member of the gang who doesn't enter the house to ambush and murder Ivan Radokaj.
Tim Richard ends up signing a written agreement with Crown prosecutors agreeing to testify against his co-conspirators in exchange for immunity. Certainly seems like he's the least involved. He doesn't actually go into the residence. So if the Crown is going to cut a deal with anyone, it's going to be the person who is usually the least involved. They would be, I would say, extremely hesitant to do it with someone that actually is an active participant.
Tim alleges that Melody is the ringleader and Rita is her co-conspirator. He reports that it's Melody herself who plans to get Ivan out of the house and to dinner, while the others would go there and lay in wait for him to return. Tim Richard may be precisely who police need. Donald Richard is not going to want to implicate his mother Rita, and Melody is holding firmly to being the abused wife of the victim. As the case grows to trial, justice hangs in the balance. On September 12, 2007, former pro wrestler Ivan Radokaj is murdered in rural Manitoba. Just before his killing, both he and his wife Melody take out protection orders against the other, both claiming to be in danger. Tim Richard, one of the men accused of murder, agrees to testify against the others for a lesser charge. In January 2008, 4 are arrested and charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. Rita Cushney, Cushney's son Donald Richard, family member Daniel Richard, and family friend Christopher Houle. Melody Sanford is first accused of conspiracy to commit murder, but as the investigation gains steam and more testimony is collected, Melody's charge is changed to also include first-degree murder. The case goes to trial in fall of 2011.
I was present for pretty much all the trial.
In order for the offense of conspiracy to be made out, it needs to be shown that 2 or more people joined together and created an intention to commit an act. The crime of conspiracy is actually made out before that act is committed, and even if the act is not committed, people can still be found guilty of being part of a conspiracy. Whether or not someone joins the conspiracy early or later on, or leaves at some point, and the scale of the role they play doesn't really matter in making out the offense itself. Where it can play a difference is in sentencing. There is no mandatory minimum sentence for conspiracy to commit murder. There is a maximum sentence of life imprisonment, however.
One of the key Crown witnesses is Timothy Richard, the cousin of the 2 Richards, Donald and Daniel. He's originally arrested and charged, but agrees to testify in exchange for immunity from prosecution.
So, having a co-conspirator or a co-accused as a primary witness against accused persons can be kind of a double-edged sword, because it's always beneficial to the prosecution to have someone who was actually there to testify about what went on. However, what the defense is going to try to argue is that this person shouldn't be trusted, shouldn't be taken seriously by the jury, because they have something to gain by testifying against their co-conspirators.
Tim states that he was at a number of meetings with all of the suspects present. At the meetings, they conspire to kill Ivan Radokaj. Melody claims Radokaj sexually molests her daughter and offers $10,000 in life insurance money for the young men to carry out the act, spending Ivan's life insurance before it gets paid out. Clearly, a murder for hire, according to Tim Richard. Tim testifies that she shows them pictures and maps of Radokaj's property during meetings at Rita Cushney's home. Melody's part in the scheme is to distract Ivan and make him think that their relationship has a chance. According to eyewitnesses at the restaurant, she played the part believably. Waitresses noticed that they saw the couple kissing in the parking lot. But the dinner date is a cold-blooded setup. Having fulfilled her part in the job, Melody gets on her cell phone to warn them that Ivan is on his way home. Rita Cushney presents herself as an elderly woman in poor health, a loving grandmother, and all along has maintained her distance from any of the machinations. She's an innocent who hosted people in her home and had no idea what they were up to. Her son Donald has been unfailingly loyal to his mother. But now we have Timothy Richard, with nothing to lose and everything to gain. Tim Richard describes a Rita Cushney who actively coaxes Donald on, tries to persuade him to help Melody with what she needs accomplished, because Rita knows he can use the extra money. Seemingly unable to pause for a sober second thought, and with Rita Cushney pushing her son forward like a Shakespearean villain, Donald Richard lacks the moral fiber to stop this runaway murder train. Tim Richard describes Rita as key in the relay of messages, including instructions for Melody to stall Ivan. Tim describes a series of phone calls between the men and Rita Cushney, who is communicating with Sanford while she's with Radokaj at dinner. And Rita warns them when Ivan is on his way home. Tim Richard reveals that Donald, Tim, and Daniel Richard make several trips to Ivan's house to scout things out. On one occasion, Donald and Tim go right up to the house, but are scared away. Their reconnaissance mission helps the men truly understand the layout of Radokaj's house and yard, and they're able to discuss vantage points and access with Melody. Jurors are shown videotaped police interviews with Sanford and Donald Richard, plus evidence seized from the Sanford's home, which includes a notebook containing a diagram of Radokaj's home. Melody's fingerprints are found on the notebook. Detailed phone records between the accused are entered as evidence, and more ugly details come forward. After the ambush and murder, the suspects returned to the getaway vehicle carrying Radokaj's television, his computer, and other goods, having not found the cash and stash of cigarettes Melody had promised. Tim Richard reveals that the men then drive into the woods, wipe the blood off their weapons, and throw them into the dense forest. They pick up beer, go to Rita's house, and celebrate. Rita hugs her son Donald and says, "I'm so proud of my bad, bad boy." The men later sell off some of Ivan's possessions for pocket change. Tim Richard's testimony couldn't be more damning, but Rita Cushney disagrees with his take on events.
Rita Cushney testifies in her own defense at the trial and claims that she doesn't know anything about the plot to kill Radokaj. Whether or not a defendant is going to testify is a very serious question for the defense to consider, because it opens the client up to cross-examination.
Melody's lawyer tells the court that it was never her intention for her husband, Ivan Radokaj, to be killed. She admits she wanted him beaten up for what he did to her, and that those who did the beating took it too far. Melody's accused Ivan of the sexual abuse of her daughter. Everyone is breathless to hear from Melody's daughter, to establish the motivation for the horrible crime. The daughter testifies that her mother Melody is lying. Ivan Radokaj never laid a hand on her. The story Melody has been telling everyone to gain sympathy is fiction. There are more voices, people who Melody thought were her friends, weighing in against her. One tells about how Melody planned to hire a hitman. Another tells how Melody boasted about wearing black at her wedding because she didn't want to marry Ivan. Observers say Melody's posture begins to sag as the trial reaches its end because she knew it was all over for her.
She was the one that, planned and everything with that.
Ivan's estranged wife Melody Sanford and all her cohorts are found guilty of first-degree murder by the jury. Melody, Rita, Donald, and Christopher are given life sentences with no chance of parole for 25 years. Because Daniel Richard admits to his role in the murder-for-hire plot just days before the trial was to begin, he gets a life sentence. Rita Cushney appears to break down prior to the jury entering the courtroom. Once the verdict was delivered, she rages at her son Donald. "Look what you did to me, you little bastard. You're dead to me." As she's taken into custody and handcuffed, Rita Cushney screams, "No," and must be silenced by authorities. This is a unique gang of accomplices who show no mercy to the victim, yet fear their own sentence. Rita Cushney is the only one of the accused who addresses Radokaj's grieving family directly prior to being sentenced. "I didn't encourage him," she says, in reference to her son Donald.
Very often you see that they have to take that little bit of blame away from themselves. They don't want to fully admit, and they've sort of in some way become the victim as well. And I think that's what we're seeing here.
This crime is a bumbling, unsophisticated act of violence, undertaken for extraordinarily little profit. Instead of destroying evidence, they try selling it. They leave so many traces, are so clumsy and seemingly unconcerned with leaving a trail, it would be hard not to get caught. Getting caught would seem inevitable. Ivan's family is now resting easier. They state that they're satisfied that justice was done, but will never understand why their son had to be murdered. Ivan John Radokaj is a man who is fooled into believing he can have love with a woman he's known for years, when she is really just after his tiny insurance settlement from a car accident. A life lost for the promise of a few bucks and a TV set.
I kind of dealt with this in a very odd way. Like, don't get me wrong, I had a great support group when this happened, like a great group of friends, great family that helped me through the whole thing. I hated the fact that people felt sorry for me, but yeah, I had my private breakdowns and stuff like that, but tried to hold it together as best as I could.
The tiny Manitoban hamlet of Inwood is quiet again, but will always be haunted by stories about 6 people who lose their moral compass and wander off into the darkness. And leave a loving family bereft, robbed of their son.